All right, let's talk about military Mickey boots. I've owned this pair that's on my feet right now for about 3.5 or 4 years. And I've seen so many other ads for other winter type, waterproof type boots. I never really paid much attention to it. And I just started thinking today why that is because I don't have issues with my feet ever getting cold or wet. Unless it was like last week when I was coyote hunting and I fell through I was on thin ice in too hot of a temperature. I fell through the thin ice near the edge of a drainage ditch in a farmer's field, and these boots got filled up by simply going underwater. But the nice thing with these boots is they're almost all rubber, and when they do fill up with water, it's so easy to dry them out that I don't know why you'd ever want some other different kind of liners or lining in the boot ever again. When you eventually get a boot swamped or when it's wet from sweat, these dry out. Of all the boots I've ever had, these dry out by far the quickest. And I guess I just see a lot of misguided information on this boot. Let me just stop here. This piece of concrete in our under 10 testing grounds. The Mickey boot itself was made for U.S. soldiers. And if you do a little research on what this little valve on the side is for, that is to let the pressure out of the boot, because when these things are laced, they create such a tight bond around the foot that the different pressures when airborne guys jump out of planes, that pressure has to be relieved. So you can open that up. It has nothing to do with any type of temperature variance. I usually keep mine closed whenever I can, but that has nothing to do with any type of temperature or pressure that the boot holds on the foot. And the other thing that's really remarkable, and it's part of the overall supremacy of this design, is most of the time you're standing when you're out in the snow. You're not sitting, you're not crawling, your foot is on the ground. The flat part of your foot is physically on the ground. So what separates these boots from others is they actually have an air channel, or an air chamber rather, that separates your foot up here from the rubber down there. So when you're in here, your foot is actually up here. These will make you stand about 1.5 inches taller because there's so much material at the bottom, and that air chamber separates your foot from the ice and snow, which on almost any other boot, if you just stand around, you can feel the cold creep up right through your foot unless you're moving around. So the nice thing with this is even when you're sitting there just doing nothing, your body heat's not working, the boot, your foot, the little bit of heat that's going down through your normal blood veins is keeping you warm. And now I've put this to the test sitting on a muskrat house this past winter. I was out there coyote hunting and it was -8 degrees. And I was just sitting like this with my boots up like that. Even with that air chamber separation between your foot and the outside ambient temperature that really separates your foot's warmth from the cold. Now, if you notice, my laces are shot here, and I don't have any interest in fixing that. One of the negatives, and you can actually see it right now, see how the inside seam of my pants twists way over here? One of the negatives of these boots is there's actually two negatives. When you lace them up, the tongue folds almost every time. It folds something like this, and then the top gets really tight. If you were doing some type of daytime trekking through deep snow or I don't know, swampier type wet conditions, then absolutely you'd want to lace them up tight and go do your work and be done. But for day-to-day activity, your foot will remain in the boot without being laced. And what what is better that way is it lets air down in the top and your foot can breathe, because otherwise you kind of get that rubber glove phenomenon where your foot will actually sweat and keep all the sweat in there because there's no place for it to go. Remember, that air valve is not designed for anything more than the pressure difference. It's not going to change the fact that your feet still sweat, and almost everybody's feet sweat when they're captured in a rubber boot. But the other thing with that tongue now, when it's folded, and I just took this one off so it doesn't show you, but see how the inseam of my pants is twisted all the way over here, the outside portion of my right foot? As you walk with these boots, and I'll show you my tracks in a second here, I'll just do a circle, and then I'll come back on my tracks. I walk pretty straight. That's my tracks, going on down and then just doing a turn. As you walk with these boots, the tongue area, the top of the boot will start to twist. There's about 200 ducks flying over here today. The top of the boot will start twisting your sock and your pants in whatever direction it feels like. For my right foot, it's almost always to the right, and for my left, it's a combination. It changes depending on how the tongue is set up. So I've noticed that having them not laced seems to really, really help that. That would be the biggest negative, I'd say, is the twisting that goes on with your pant legs. If you were doing a ton of walking and you knew you were coming back at night where you could dry out a standard type liner, then I would choose a different kind of boot, because these would twist your pants and your sock and you'd just be irritated. There goes a bunch more ducks here in southern Wisconsin. But if you're going to do any type of long distance hiking and then camping that night, or long distance hunting, and you don't know if you're going to be sitting out in the outback somewhere overnight for the next day, then I'd want these boots, because you could take your feet out of them and just open them up by the fire and they'll be dry the next day for sure. They'll be dry in an hour. It doesn't take much to dry these boots out. Whereas if you had to try to dry out a soaked liner from foot sweat, you'd be mighty discomfortable the next day. So that would be my review on the military Mickey boots. Oh, and the other best thing about these is, in really, really premium condition, these are about $60. It wasn't very long ago I paid $30 for these. I'm sure you can get them at all different price level points now. And the only other thing I'd say about that is I absolutely hate the way the white ones look. The black ones just look more like footwear. The white ones just look goofy. But obviously we understand why the white ones were made, is to help conceal our soldiers in colder climates. I think these boots, somebody could fact check me on this. I think these boots were made during the Cold War period. So obviously we were concerned about a winter war with Russia, and we needed to be snow camouflaged. So that's my review on the military Mickey boots. I give them thumbs up for cost and effectiveness. They meet the under 10 criteria of where those two paths of cost and effectiveness intersect in a good way. Under 10, out.